560, The Answer.
Get the latest weather, traffic, and news updates online at 560theanswer.com. Now, from the Signature Bank Studios, this is Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan Proft on AM 560. The Answer.
Top of the morning, Dan Proft here. More color on that House Oversight Committee hearing on benefits fraud that we began discussing last hour. Here was Oversight Committee Chairman Jim Comer kicking it off with some general comments.
This isn't just a Minnesota problem. It's a problem for taxpayers across the United States. About 35% of Minnesota's budget comes from federal grants. 35% of Minnesota's budget comes from federal grants. Hardworking Americans pay those taxes, and that money is being funneled to fraudsters, funding luxury homes, fancy cars, and vacations abroad. Some of it is even allegedly going overseas to support terrorists. And yet, Governor Walz, Attorney General Ellison, and Minnesota Democrats failed to act despite countless warnings. They failed Minnesotans and all Americans, handing millions of taxpayer dollars to fraudsters.
Yeah, and as we're gleaning from some of the responses we're getting from neo-Marxist politicians at the city and state level around the country, where fraud has been exposed in terms just as certain as those in Minnesota, it's going to take federal action. It's going to take turning off the spigot, as the president is moving to do, to achieve some level of compliance. It would seem, we played you the clip from Katie Wilson, the newly minted Marxist mayor of Seattle, who said in response to whether or not she has referred any of these reports of fraud to investigators, no. No, and I'm not going to, and you can't make me. It's something to behold. As was this exchange. Brandon Gill, our friend from Texas, who performs very well in these Q&A sessions, congressional hearings. One of those testifying before the committee was a former DOJ special counsel named Brendan Ballou. And he was there essentially to defend the status quo in Minnesota. Sort of gave it away in his response to the first question. And then Brandon Gill drilled down with the data.
Mr. Ballou, again, thank you for being here. Let me ask you, does large-scale Somali immigration make Minnesota stronger or weaker?
Certainly stronger.
Certainly stronger. Do you know what percentage of Somali-headed households in Minnesota are on food stamps?
No.
54%. Do you know what that number is for native Minnesota-headed households?
Well, to be clear, a majority of the...
It's 7%. There's a big difference between 54% and 7%, is there not?
Excuse me, sir. Could I answer the question?
Let me move on. We've got a lot of questions here. What percentage of Somali-headed households in Minnesota are on Medicaid?
I don't know.
It's 73%. Do you know what that number is for Minnesota native households?
Again, you're using the phrase Minnesota native households, but the majority...
The number is 18%. That's quite an astounding difference. I think we would agree.
Can I answer the question, please?
Let me ask you one more, and then we can go on to that. What percentage of Somali-headed households are on welfare in general?
I don't know.
It's 81%. What about, let me just ask you, after 10 years of being in the United States, what percentage of Somali immigrant households continue to be on welfare?
I don't know.
The number is 78%. So even after 10 years, 78% of Somali immigrant households continue to be on welfare. Do you know what that number is for native Minnesota-headed households?
Again, you're using
non-Somali immigrant-headed households.
If I can just answer the question, when you're using the phrase native Minnesotans, the majority of Somali Minnesotans are as Minnesotan as any of us. They were born in the United States. It's only 8,000 of the 108,000 Somali.
Nevertheless, the welfare usage is astoundingly different. Let me ask you again, does that make Minnesota stronger or weaker?
Again, I'd like the opportunity to answer the question here.
Go for it.
again, the majority of Somali Minnesotans are born in the United States, as I understand it.
Okay, well, what percentage of working-age Somalians who have been in the U.S. for 10 years or more, how many of them speak English very well?
I don't know.
About half. The answer is about half. That seems pretty low, doesn't it?
Again.
Point here is this attempt that Baloo makes to say, well, they're born here, so you can't say Somali households versus native Minnesotan households because we're all immigrants. And no, because what's the underlying question? The underlying question is mass migration of Somalis in this instance, but we could talk about other groups and other communities, and it's the same story. Mass migration, indiscriminate migration, essentially. Without consideration, I mean, this is the subtext, without consideration for the likelihood of assimilation, without consideration for the likelihood of independence, as opposed to state dependence. Is that a net positive or net negative? Makes the community stronger or weaker? Oh, stronger. No, it doesn't. Obviously it doesn't. The vision of the beacon of opportunity and freedom that is America is to come here to be a state dependent. Well, the incidence of this community or that community that's native born with respect to accessing benefit, who cares? It's not relevant. What's relevant is the decision, the criteria we use to make decisions about who is allowed to come to this country. And the point is, we've been using the wrong criteria. We're not using criteria, whether it's from Somalia or Central Europe. Dispense with their identitarian bull jive. Are we making sure this individual person is either fleeing religious or political persecution and is a legitimate asylee candidate, and or is coming to this country with the idea of becoming an American, not a Somali separatist living in America, is interested in assimilating because that provides the best chance of success, just like immigrants from a century ago did, and is interested in being independent, which is part of what defines success, rather than a state dependent. That's what Brandon Gill is getting to. And in response to that, I mean, just to give you a sense of the left, like you need another sense, but this is an instant classic. And I don't recall ever hearing from this Rothel from Washington State. Emily Randall is a congresswoman. And I'm going to tip you off here. How do you know she's a Rothel, Dan? She went to Wellesley. Hillary Clinton, you. I rest my case. And if that wasn't enough, listen to what she said.
We can trot out all of the data that we want to create the sense that there is a bad guy. There is a bad group of people. There are folks who are not among us. There are folks who are other. And I think we should spend a lot more time looking at ourselves, looking at American citizens, looking at white men.
At Wellesley Education, hey, we can't be othering people. Now let's indiscriminately look at white men because they are as a monolith. They're monolith number one, and they're the problem. It's so compelling. Ah, man. On so many of these stories, I do just the SNL skit of Dana Carvey as George H.W. Bush and John Lovitz as Dukakis comes to mind, but in reverse. You listen to this play out in these states, including my home state of Illinois, and you say to yourself, like Lovitz said to himself on that debate stage after listening to Dana Carvey's, babbling impersonation of George Herbert Walker Bush, I can't believe I'm losing to this guy. I cannot believe we're losing to these people in Washington State and Minnesota and New York and Illinois and Maine. Stunning. For more on this, please be joined by Ken Cuccinelli, National Chairman of the Election Transparency Initiative, former Virginia Attorney General, of course, and former Deputy Secretary of DHS, Homeland Security. Ken, thanks for joining us again. Appreciate it.
Yeah, good to be with you, Dan.
So one of the things, so let's meld a couple of these issues. One of the things that was raised by Dr. Oz this week, and he's become more relevant than ever because of Medicaid fraud, and he is the director of the Center for Medicare and Medicaid Services, is that part of the play here is get these people on the welfare rolls and you get them on the voter rolls.
Oh, no question. This is several separate pipelines, but there's lots of things going on here. We've seen the child care fraud. You're going to see that expand beyond child care. Look, when I was Attorney General, we broke the record for Medicaid fraud prosecutions in Virginia, the 12th largest state with the largest prosecutions. Well, Minnesota is probably going to break those records. And now we were operating nationally.
No thanks to their to their Attorney General, that's for sure.
No. He's in on covering it up. He's not alone, of course, but they're disarmed. They, being the people who are supposed to police fraud in Minnesota, are disarmed by their political virtue signaling. So Somalis in Minnesota can do no wrong in the woke left pantheon, and even when they're doing lots of wrong, and the Keith Ellisons and the Tim Wallses of the world will cover for them rather than investigate, and we're seeing the consequences of that. And that's true whether it's across their elections, whether it's across their welfare, frankly, every other form of crime. That you see. They cover for these communities because they're part of their woke virtue signaling. So it's quite a benefit if you're a Somali. The law doesn't apply to you.
And their political constituency, as you were insinuating. I mean, that's the key. Where their power resides is essentially owning these populations electorally. And when it becomes too much, when their time as a mascot is run, they become more of a liability than an asset for identitarian political purposes, then they quietly walk away. So we find the Quality Leering Center that just bought a new sign. It's very sad. After 8.5 years of allegedly, according to one of the managers, being open every day, even though the state officials said no, they were closed and reopened or whatever it was, millions of dollars later, the Quality Leering/Learning Center is now quietly closed just this week.
Shocking. A little bit late on that one, Charlie. But
right.
All that leering.
Yes.
Part of what's funny here is they didn't even spell leering correctly.
That's true. They were sounding it out, as you just heard from Brandon Gill. It's a coin toss with respect to their English proficiency a decade later. And so let's talk about your other role though too, former role as Deputy Secretary of DHS, and I want to get your perspective on what the Homeland Security Secretary had to say yesterday in response to that ICE-involved shooting in Minneapolis.
The facts of the matter is he's an experienced officer. He's been in situations like this before, and he certainly has been out there and followed his training today. People need to stop using their vehicles as weapons. This domestic act of terrorism to use your vehicle to try to kill law enforcement officers is going to stop. And I'm asking the Department of Justice to prosecute it as domestic terrorism because it's clear that it's being coordinated. People are being trained and told how to use their vehicles to impede law enforcement operations and then to run over anybody who gets in their way while they go out there and try to disrupt peace and public safety.
What do you think, Ken?
Yeah, first of all, it's very advantageous to have so much video of an incident. Let's just be blunt about it if we want to judge the incident. And there's lots of it out there, several different angles. The car actually struck the agent and was after being detained. By detained, I mean ordered to get out of the car. She clearly heard it. Her window was down. And she hit the gas, not the brake, and then hit the officer. So under those circumstances, with the officer in front of the car, yes, he was off the left corner, but he was in front of the vehicle and was struck by the vehicle. The shoot is a legitimate self-defense act, particularly when they had been being stalked all day. And information isn't out yet, so I'm not sure whether these particular agents would have specifically identified the specific vehicle as being among their stalkers. But if you look at the video footage, you see that the vehicle is perpendicular to the roadway. She's blocking the roadway.
Right.
And anybody military listening to you and me would recognize that immediately as an ambush position. Doesn't mean that's what she intended or was going to do, but there's no reason those officers to know what she intends. All they can see is what she's actually doing. And, under those circumstances, the Supreme Court law is not new on this. The incident is judged in the moment from the perspective of a reasonable officer under the circumstances as he knew them. And I'm confident, as the Secretary just said, that this is going to be a legally defensible act of self-defense. That doesn't mean anybody should be happy about the fact that the woman didn't survive. The point of shooting is to stop the threat. It isn't to kill, it's to stop. And there is a difference, but sometimes stop ends up being kill. And that's on her, that's not on the officer. And, this is going to take a long time to play out. While I think the federal officials will clear the officer quickly, the woman is dead, so there won't be a formal prosecution. Doesn't mean there won't be an investigation if she wasn't working with others. But there can also be state prosecutions that will be removed to federal court that could take a long time to go through for this officer, and for him to be, cleared both federally and at the state level. So this is a long, arduous path for this officer. It's easy. It's easy to depersonalize this stuff at a distance. You and I don't know these two people, but every day an officer of the law straps on a gun. They're the only people. We don't even ask military to do this. They're the only people we ask to walk into harm's way in this country every single day, with the threat that their life could be taken or threatened, as this one was.
That's the larger point.
And to stand in the way of that. And he literally was standing in the way of it.
And that's the larger point. The larger point is that this is being fomented by the left. Now, maybe to this point, it hasn't risen to the level of criminality, but this sort of half-assed vigilantism, this is purposeful.
Yeah.
I would argue this is looking for cause celebs. This is looking for people to do stupid things and sacrifice themselves for the purpose of being political fodder for politicians like Walz and Fry and Omar, as we saw yesterday.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. I mean, they are. I don't want to say celebrating this. They want this tragedy. They want the blood. They want the controversy, because they don't care about the officer. They don't care about his family. They don't care about this woman or her family. They just care about scoring political points, and they're happy to have the opportunity, in their view, to do it. The only people I think they score political points with are their radical left bases, which they're already pretty solid with, really. But ordinary Americans see this and they act with revulsion. That's the reaction, and it should be. And by that I mean the instigating and we'll see what happens in Minneapolis, but when I was deputy secretary, they let their own cities burn.
Yeah.
In Portland, Oregon, we see it's a community activity. Minneapolis picked it up after the George Floyd killing, and granted that was not a legitimate police action. But those are incredibly rare, and yesterday's does not fall in that category. This was an action by an offender. The woman driving struck an officer who had previously been dragged by a vehicle. He responded in a fashion I suspect that we will learn about his training, where he was trained to do a 2 or 3 shot burst and as backing off, and that's exactly what he did. That all happened. If you watch the first video that got out on social media, from the time you see the first two ICE officers walking, not running, walking to approach the vehicle, telling the woman to get out of the vehicle with an open window, which means she is detained and can't leave, till the point where she hits the gas and hits the officer is a total of 8 seconds. The whole thing happens in 8 seconds. And the shots, of course, are less than half a second. It's just literally, it's a burst as the officer's being hit by the vehicle and bouncing off to the side. And he keeps his feet. So, it's tragic. The left wants this. They want this. They don't want the law enforced, and they treat enforcing the law as some sort of violation of what should be going on, when in fact all these people, and I love your phrase, half-assed vigilantism, that's exactly what it is. These people want to be in the way. They want to be harassed. They want to be harassed. They want someone to video them being harassed so they can be a hero, but they don't want to get up to the line of being arrested or hurt. Well, this woman crossed the line in her half-assed vigilantism. What she thinks of as vigilantism, really what it is half-assed law-breaking.
Ken Cuccinelli, National Chairman of the Election Transparency Initiative, former Virginia Attorney General, and former Deputy Secretary of Department of Homeland Security as well. Ken, thank you as always. Appreciate your time.
Hey, good to be with you. Talk to you, Dan.
Good to have you. And Ken Cuccinelli joined us on the Turnkey.pro answer line.
The stories you need to know to start your day. This is Chicago's Morning Answer on AM 560. The Answer.
Tired of tech headaches slowing your business down? Unique Computing Solutions has been the go-to IT team for businesses in Illinois and Northwest Indiana for nearly 30 years. We've seen how a poor IT infrastructure can cripple productivity. Your systems should be running